called the Dialectic of Master and Slave. And this Dialectic of Master and Slave is the one that's most influential in the Marxist readings of Hegel. And the idea is this, that in the earliest and most primitive stages of consciousness, some people are willing to risk their lives to dominate other people. And what they long for is not so much work from other people or some kind of obedience. What they want is recognition. They want others to recognize their power. This is a very roundabout way of saying that identity is socially constructed. And that there is something built right into human beings, a sort of lust for power or domination, which has paradoxical effects. This is incidentally the generation of the beginning of history. In other words, when we move from our sense perception of the world to our attempt to dominate other people, that's the beginning of history. And it's also analogous in the Bible to the fall of man. It's the beginning of sin and the beginning of alienation for Marxists. Well, this Dialectic of Master and Slave emerges. And what we get here is that some masters, people who are willing to put their life on the line and risk their life in order to dominate others, well, some of them are victorious and kill their opponents. And the ones that are victorious get to lord it over all others. Those who don't want to risk their lives, who think this is a foolish project, they become slaves. They submit to the master. This happens all over the world. Here's the idea, and here's where the cunning of history comes in. By becoming a master, the master does not liberate himself. In fact, quite the opposite. He makes himself dependent upon the slave. By becoming enslaved, the slave does not become shackled to the master. In fact, he becomes free because he's the one that connects with nature and produces all the things that he needs and all the things that the master needs. In other words, the slave doesn't need the master needs the slave. The one who's really enslaved is the master. It's a tremendous irony, and it's a very powerful thought. He's right, too. Right? You never see masters running away from their slaves. Right? And here's the reason why. Right? It's a deep thought. I mean, it's a tremendous insight. And the point here is that, ironically, the slave meets the negativity of nature and is forced to confront nature, develops his own skill, develops his own internal elements, and as a result achieves as much liberation as is possible in that stage. This set of ironic contradictions, where the master is dependent and the slave is free, this cunning of history, this terrible irony, generates another intriguing stage called the unhappy consciousness. The unhappy consciousness is the consciousness of the fact that we have not achieved the freedom we long for in this first phrase, and the unhappy consciousness attempts to achieve freedom by a combination of resignation and dependence upon the self.